There, gee. Sorry about that. Okay, so today we're going to basically talk about the basic concepts of gut health. And when we say gut health, this isn't just a one size fits all approach. And before going into resolutions or possible issues you could be having, obviously we need to go over kind of what that looks like and how in depth it actually is. Because a lot of people just think, oh, my stomach is my stomach and doesn't have any correlation with anything else in the body. Could not be further from the truth. So the first thing is kind of distinguishing the role of the gut. Obviously, we don't really need to talk about digesting food because I think everyone can make that connection. But if you haven't heard this from Nick or myself, you will a whole lot. It is essential and top priority when it comes to your immune system, right? A lot of the microbiome or bacteria in your stomach is going to have a direct correlation on your immunity. As sick as I've been lately, I probably have been taking care of my gut health. So this rings true to me right now. The next one's detoxification, inflammation. And that's kind of limiting inflammation, but also if you're eating foods that are inflammatory to you, it can be a cause of inflammation as well. Neurotransmitter and vitamin production. So a lot of people don't really realize that. You'll see this in later slides. Your gut is your second brain, okay? And a lot of the neurotransmitters that your brain uses, your gut also uses, and arguably has about the same as your spinal cord, okay? Vitamin production, obviously there's certain foods that when they're broken down, your gut is the only thing that can transport it across the gut lining. And that's going to hold true for a lot of your fat soluble vitamins. D3 is a big one. Nutrient absorption, I think we all know that just from digestion, breaking things down. Signaling of being hungry or full. This is due to your hormones, ghrelin and leptin is another one that's going to kind of send that signal back and forth. And utilizing carbs and fats. Proteins obviously can fall in there as well, but carbohydrates are probably the fastest digested out of the three macros. So you're going to see a lot more of that appropriation from gut health in general, or the role of the gut, I should say. Now, when I said kind of going over the basics, this is in-depth basics, but it's the functioning of the stomach, right? So your immune system, like we spoke about, is residing in your gut, okay? It makes up the largest component, and I'm going to read this word for word because I typed this up and I don't want to screw it up, of your body's immune system. There are more immune cells in the wall of your gut than circulating in your bloodstream or living in your bone marrow, right? So again, this is why your gut health and making sure that this balance between bacteria is in a good place. It can immediately detect dangerous bacteria invaders among the ocean of trillion of other malevolent microbiomes and living in your gut. So like we mentioned, you cannot stress how important your gut health is for your immune system. Endocrine. So basically, if you could clump all of your endocrine cells together, lining the gut into one mass, it would be greater than all the other endocrine organs combined. Just to put that in perspective. And then 95% of your body's serotonin is stored in the gut and plays a crucial role in the gut-brain axis. So that happy hormone, serotonin, is going to be a big role in this. So that's why a lot of people don't understand and this, I'm going off another tangent, but there are direct correlations the more and more research they do with depression and gut health. And some people that take antidepressants or things that alter your brain's chemistry and your serotonin release can actually alter a lot of your gut health as well. Again, that's later down the road, but it's just take note of that now because it is something that could be factoring into your gut health. And like I said earlier, the second brain. So your gut has its own nervous system known as the enteric nervous system, ENS for short. This is made up of 50 to 1 million nerve cells. So like I said earlier, it's about as many as your spinal cord. That's insane. Because I think a lot of us downplay how important gut health is. When you kind of put it in correlation with your spinal cord and the importance of that, it's crazy. A lot of people, I didn't really realize that until college, and then I actually started paying more attention. But as you know, like your gut contains a whole microbiome. There are over 100,000 microbiomes in your gut alone. Wait, did I read that wrong? There's 100,000 more microbiomes in your gut alone than there is people on Earth. So it's not as simple as taking a probiotic with acidophilus in it and just everything gets better. It's not going to work like that. The 1,000 bacterial species that make up your microbiome contain 7 million genes. And then this one I think is pretty cool, that whoever you're sitting next to, you share about 95% of the DNA as the person next to you. But when we're talking about your gut microbiota species, you only share about 10%. So again, why we keep saying like it's not a one size fits all. You can't just take a supplement, make this better, and not what works for Nick, not going to work for you or me. That's why only about 10% correlation between person to person. And guys, I'm sorry, this first step is boring. Once we get to problem solving later, it'll be a lot more fun. Vagus nerve is another thing that is a huge role in this. So 90% of the signals that travel through your vagus nerve are sent through the gut to the brain. Only 10% comes from the brain to the gut, right? So if you're eating certain things that are inflammatory, they're going to signal out to the brain. And so for a lot of you, there are a lot of other things that could take place as to why you feel crappy or lethargic or tired or like low-key kind of sad after eating certain foods. But this is one of the main ones. If you're eating things that are inflammatory to you or highly processed, it makes up the majority of your diet, chances are that lethargic, that down feeling you're experiencing is due to this signaling. It's basically your vagus nerve tries to tell your brain like, hey, like this isn't the right thing for us, and this is why. It's just another defense mechanism and another communication system. Vagus nerve is the longest of the 12 cranial nerves and the primary channel of information between your nerve cells and your intestines and our CNS. So there's a lot going on here. If we're playing telephone, this guy holds all the cards, right? It directs bodily processes that we don't consciously control. I mean, I don't think I really need to go over that, but digestion's one, breathing's one. Like when you're sleeping, you're breathing, right? Nick, chime in here. What are some other things that we do not think about that we do? Why am I drawing brain fog right now?
What
are some other things that we do that we don't consciously control?
Like your heart beating?
Oh yeah, it's another one. It's another great one.
One kind of matters.
Yeah.
I like sphincter control. Like you don't really think about not going to the bathroom when you're walking around.
Yeah.
It's all, I mean,
but yeah, I mean,
you probably think of a lot of them.
Yeah, you get the point. Basically, it's going to control all of those things that you don't consciously control. The population of bacteria in your gut directly affects the stimulation and function of the cells along the vagus nerve, right? So again, this all comes back. We keep separating these of importance, but it keeps coming back to the same thing. Gut health is affecting all these in the microbiome. So if you are lacking sleep, if you're not eating things that are very high in fiber, if you're eating a lot of processed things and stress is cumulative high, maybe you've taken a couple rounds of antibiotics for whatever reason, chances are that the bacteria in your stomach are not going to be balanced very well, and that's going to start affecting these things as well. I put this, but we don't need to talk about that. Moving on to your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, but most people know them as the fight or flight response. So this kind of shows that correlation that I just spoke about. So I guess I should have showed this first, okay? The vagus nerve can affect gut motility, so moving food along, digestive secretion. This is talking about enzymes, your HCl, so the stomach acid your body's releasing, microbial balance. So we're talking about the microbiome again, mood, which I mentioned that after eating certain things, you realize like you're not in the best mood, you kind of feel like shit, you don't feel too great. I forgot to mention it can also affect your sleep. This is due more to melatonin release. And when there's inflammation, typically your body's releasing cortisol and the vagus nerve will actually suppress melatonin for a time being. So it can affect your sleep. Neurotransmitters, stress coming back to, again, that, and immune signaling. Stimulating the vagus nerve, deep breathing, obviously that's going to help alleviate this. Laughing, or a lot of people say it's easier to laugh than be like upset or pissed off all the time. There actually is a lot of science now supporting that. Yoga can actually help with this because it helps when people sit all day, and even when you're working out, you're constantly crunching, but you don't think about expanding the rib cage. That's why these two things right here are noted, because they can actually help. Singing, we all can't fucking do it, so that's not fair. Humming, again, most people do not want to hear that, but all these things, leisure walks, moving your body, expanding that rib cage, healthy exercise, as you all should be doing, and proper sleep. So all these things are going to stimulate proper functionality out of the vagus nerve, right? But I think it's funny they're putting things on there that not everyone can do. Good, at least. But deep breathing is something we all can practice at any point in time in the day. So that's a good one to mention. Excuse me. And then the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic, this is what we like to call the rest and digest part of the central nervous system. So when you are working out or you're in a stressful situation, sympathetic nervous system is the fight response, right? Or flight, I guess you would say, right? But basically, it's the one that kicks in under stress. This is also stimulated when you're working out, right? When you're having an intense session, your body shifts from this to this, okay? Another thing that stimulates the sympathetic nervous system is caffeinated beverages or stimulants of any kind. If you take any kind of medication that is a stimulant-based medication, the most well-known one is Adderall, Vyvanse, stuff like that. That also stimulates this. And obviously, if you have to take it for a medical purpose, I'm not saying don't take that. Just be aware that it does sometimes put you into that sympathetic overdrive. But caffeine is something we all can control. And I'm not going to say you should cut it out completely, because if you know me, you know I overconsume and I'm working on it. I don't need judgment. But it is going to put you in a sympathetic overdrive, which decreases the vagus nerve activity, leading to slow motility, gas, bloating. So if you have ever kind of noticed this, if you have a meal and then you drink a highly caffeinated beverage before or right after, typically you're going to have gas and bloating because it is shutting off that motility, right? And constipation, anxiety, poor sleep, ultimately the chronic state of stress, like we talked about, low immunity, okay, I'm not going to go over all these things, but the big thing to know is it's going to throw you in sympathetic overdrive. And what people don't realize is another thing that if this is dominating, this is dominating most of your day, most of your life, hormones are going to start to take a hit too. Now you're starting to see why, as you understand the role of the gut and how it directly affects a lot of other endocrine and hormonal systems in the brain, especially. But if we're constantly stimulating the sympathetic nervous system, we're going to start having a lot of issues hormonally. And over a longer period of time, that's going to be harder to reverse. Okay. And then this one's pretty well known when people are in sympathetic overdrive from too many stimulants or just whatever, is anxiety. And then obviously that crash and depression. Now, parasympathetic nervous system signals the body to digest, rest, increase gut motility, secreting beneficial neurotransmitters to the brain, and slowing your heart rate, which when we're talking about longevity, you do not want your heart always working harder because it's not going to last as long. So slowing the heart rate, lowering your resting heart rate is going to be beneficial for long-term health. Okay. That's where I'm stopping today, because the next one goes into gut reactions, and that's a whole nother ballpark. But boom. Okay. Questions. I know it's kind of all over the place, but any questions y'all have?
I don't have a question. I just didn't realize how much pop or soda, whatever you want to call it, affects the gut.
Sorry, say that one more time. What affects it?
Pop, soda, carbonation.
Yeah, it definitely can. And every person's tolerance to it is going to be a little bit different. Like, the more you use something that can be seen as harmful, the more your body is normalized to it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad or good. It just means it's going to respond, or it's going to get more used to processing it. But yes, that kind of carbonation, and just due to the nature of soda and kind of like what it does to the acidity or the pH level of your stomach acid, it can actually be pretty harmful when we're talking about digestion.